Hello, I'm retired Battalion Chief Larry Cockman from the Greensboro, North Carolina Fire Department History Book Committee. We're here today at the Greensboro Historical Museum. I'm standing in front of the General Green, the first steam pumper, or as they called it back then, a steamer. Today, December 9th, 2019, we are starting a new tradition of recording and preserving the heritage and culture of our retirees. Our retirees have contributed so much to the success of our great fire department. Their stories retire with them and are sometimes gone forever when they pass away. They will share their emergency calls that will always be a part of their memories forever. So sit back and listen as they carry us through their journey in the Greensboro Fire Department.
My name's Guy Patterson. I spent 31 years with the Greensboro Fire Department. When I retired in 2011, I was a rank of captain. And this is Veterans Day, and I'd like to wish all the veterans that may be watching this in the future, I thank you for your service. I went to Northeast High School. That's where I graduated.
Okay.
And right after I graduated, 2 years later, I got on with the Greensboro Fire Department. Well, I was born in Greensboro, and in 1968, my mom and dad had divorced, and she decided she wanted to move away, to get away from everything. So we moved to Chicago, and I lived up there for about 5 years. I spent time between there and here. I'd go there Labor Day till Easter, and then from Easter to Labor Day I'd be down here with my dad in Greensboro. And but when I was in Chicago, there was a fire station down the street from where I was living, and I'd stop by there on the way home from school and hang out with the guys and talk to them. And really what got me interested in wanting to serve as a firefighter was they used to have the box alarms on the street where you pull if there was a fire. Well, a box alarm come in one day while I was there, and they jumped on a truck. Then they rode tailboard, which is on the back of the truck, hanging on. And they were going to the call. One of the guys was putting his gear on going down the road, and they went around a curve, and it slung him off, and a car run over him and killed him. And so that's what really got me wanting to serve in the fire service. It was a long, drawn-out process, and you know, you was on pins and needles every day because they would keep telling you that you'd be getting a letter in the mails, and if it was a thin envelope, you was good to go. If it was thick, you wasn't. So, you know, you was going to the mailbox every day, checking the mailbox to see after each piece of the process you went through. But at the end, the last couple of times that I was going to the mailbox, me and the wife went together, and I had her open the letter that stated that I'd been hired. My training officers were Randy Parrish and Larry Cockman, and I think Frank Jones was the training supervisor, and Virginia Robbins was in there as the secretary. And funny stories. Yeah, we were doing some rappelling, and we took a break, and there was 3 or 4 of us up on about the 3rd or 4th floor of the drill tower with Captain Cockman, and we took his helmet off and put it on Rugged Ron, which was a dummy we had up there, and we chucked him out the window and hollered on, you know, like he was, and everybody else was walking toward the training center to take a break, and everybody thought we didn't throw Larry out the window. When they turned around and seen that red helmet coming out the window. But it was pretty good. We had some good times. There was 21 members in our class. when we started, and we graduated at 18. I guess for me, the highest moment was overcoming some of my fears. I know when we did jumping into the life net, that was kind of spooky. And I remember getting up into the window and you guys telling us, you know, kick your feet out, let your butt hit first, and try to hit the red dot. And the first thing I said when I got up in the window to all my classmates that was holding that net is, if I made anybody mad, I'm sorry. Because I didn't want them to let go of that net when I jumped. But the low would have been the day that we had to make some cuts in the class. I think that was probably the lowest time. Brotherhood in the fire service is doing whatever you can to help somebody else out, and it don't have to be on duty. It can be putting a roof on, helping them put a roof on their house, or helping them cut some trees down, or just being together and sharing times together is what I think the brotherhood is. And no, I don't think the brotherhood's there anymore.
You think it's completely gone?
I don't think it's something that was intended. I think just over time, people's priorities different. It's a faster paced lifestyle now, I think. And I think everybody's intentions are well, but sometimes we're more focused on our family, our kids. They take up a lot of time now with people playing sports and doing all this other stuff, and you just get caught up in the hustle and bustle of life. And I think over time, we have all got kind of lazy as Americans, and instead of doing some of that stuff ourselves like we used to have to do, you pay for it now. You just get somebody else to do it. So I think that's kind of divided the brotherhood a little. On the engine, it was Captain Page, Jerry Schamberger was the driver, and Randy Gordon, Milton Moore, and myself was on the engine. And on the ladder was Raymond Cotman, Charlie Reed was the driver, and we had Randy Penix, Paul Brooks, and 5 for me set the foundation for my career, because I was over there with some guys that was really focused on a career in the fire service, and it wasn't a job to them. It was something that was just like it was in their heart, that that's what they wanted to do. So I still think some's got it in their heart. To me, a firefighter, police officer, paramedic, a soldier, clergy, I think that's a calling. I don't think you wake up one day and just say, oh, I'm going to be a fireman. I think it's something that you migrate to, you're drawn to. That for me, it was the adrenaline, the wanting to be. I always wanted to. I didn't wish ill will on anybody, but the big call, I wanted to be on it every day. I wanted to be on that big call, and some days you win, some days you lose. We were playing softball together. He was the coach of the softball team, Greensboro Fire Department team, and that's when Rambo come out, the movie Rambo. And so I started wearing a bandana around my head instead of a hat, and that's where Doug come up with the name. He started calling me Guy when I started wearing that bandana. So that's how I got that nickname. My first call was a car fire, and it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. It was on West Market Street, just east of Wendover, and We had them old Hardy pistol grip nozzles. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. But
You know I do.
But anyway, I come off the truck and I grabbed the booster reel off the truck and I had it under my arm and I was coming across the median to get to it and I was putting my gloves on and the left front tire on that thing blowed out and it kind of buckled my knees a little bit. Captain Page said, "Son, I need to hold you up while you put that stuff on." So yeah, that was my first call. But my first fire, building fire or structure fire, was at Thomas Produce down at Church. I believe it was Church and Friendly.
Stands out in
The
mind.
first fire death I had was probably, it might have been in the 90s. And I know it's hard to believe because I spent a lot of time in the 80s at Station 7, but it was on Wilkerson Street, and it was an apartment fire. And we just cleared, matter of fact, I believe you was a battalion chief then, over at 7. And we'd had a fire on Salem Street, and you sent us back to the station on the squad. And while we was at the station, we got a call on Wilkerson Street, and 4 was out on that Salem Street call, along with Engine 7. So it was 8 and 11 that was coming. We got there first, and we pulled the booster reel off the truck and went in there to knock the fire down. And we found them sitting on the edge of the couch. But that was my first fire day. The reason we didn't ride any medical calls at Station 5 when I first come out of training was because we had the squad there. They wrote all the medical calls in the battalion. So very seldom did we ever get dispatched on any kind of medical calls. But when I went to 6, being it was a kind of a outlying station, we would get dispatched periodically, but we had 2 plumbers that was under a house doing some plumbing, and they got into some electrical wires with the pipes and stuff, and it sent both of them into cardiac arrest, and we had to crawl up in there and pull them out of the house, and we had 2 CPRs going on at the same time.
Wow.
Biggest incident I ever responded to was Davie Street. I was on duty that night. I was at Station 7, and about 23:40 to 45 at night, we got a medical call on Lee's Chapel Road on a cardiac. And we got, myself and Jesse Walker were riding together on the squad that night. I was driving, and we got to about Yanceyville and Cornwallis when they dispatched the Davie Street call. Well, about the time we got on the scene on Lee's Chapel Road is when Engine 4 got there and said they had fire and smoke showing. So as soon as we got there at the call, EMS was already there, so we went inside and asked them if they needed us on that call. They said, "No, we got it." So we jumped back on the squad and responded down to Davie Street. And when we got down to Davie Street, they done called for a second alarm. And my main focus was to try to get up with Captain Sawyer, who was our captain on Truck 4 at the time out of Station 7. And it was him and Emmett Van Ness was the 2 guys that was on the truck that night. And then me and Jesse was the other 2 people that was assigned to the ladder truck on structure fires. And so we got up with them after we got there. And myself and Captain Sawyer went into a building adjacent to where the fire originated. And we saw fire in the cracks of the floor above us, so we knew it was time to get out. And that's when he made the decision to talk with Chief Shoemate, who was a battalion chief on the call down there, and tell him that we needed to pull everybody out. and go defensive. Yeah, it did, and that's when it jumped the street and got into Greensboro Court Apartments and all that stuff. They were under renovation then. We dealt with things in the fire service. Just like the general public going through the airport now, they got to strip down and be searched and all this stuff. We had to take extra precautions when we go on these calls, and we started getting flooded with white powder calls and all that stuff after 9/11, and it just seemed like it just kept piling on and piling on and piling on. But yeah, and I think as far as helping the fire service, it did, because they realized that we were the protection at home. The firefighters, the police officers, the paramedics. It wasn't the soldiers, and I'm not taking nothing wrong from soldiers, but you know, they're off fighting the enemy. We're here protecting the homeland. And you know, that led to us getting more involved in weapons of mass destruction and all this other stuff that's going on in the world today. So I think it made us better as an organization. It got us prepared for what could happen.
Okay.
I guess being that you and Randy Parrish were our training officers, there's always that bond there. And I think that was your first class, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, that was our first class too. So we got that bond there. But the other two that really stand out is Ed Sawyer and J. McCarter. I mean, them were two guys that I think were rocks. I mean, I never seen neither one of them get excited or seen any fear in their eyes, or you could tell that they were under control. No matter what the situation was, they were under control, and they wasn't panicking. They knew what they needed to do. Now, whether we could do it or not might be a different story, but they knew what we needed to do, and they were focused in on making sure we all come back to the station alive. So, yeah.
If you didn't, that's fine. But
I think my biggest challenge was me. And what I mean by that is, I think at some point in time in all of his career, you look around and you see folks climbing that ladder faster than you're climbing it, and you want to know why. Why are they climbing it and I'm not able to climb it? And I guess sometimes it's got to be, my problem was maturity. It took me longer to mature than it did a lot of other people. And I was always the one that wanted to, I'd try anything, just about anything. And don't tell me I ain't gonna do something, because I'm gonna show you that, yeah, I'm gonna do it more than the other. And I think I always felt like I was being, not shunned, but looked over, or whatever word you want to put with it. But looking back on my career now, I was there 17 years before I got promoted to captain. And I think it was a good thing.
okay.
There was a couple of most heartbreaking moments. One of them was I was working the day that Raymond died, over at 6.
Yeah.
And the other one was I was in the training division, and I was assisting burning an apartment complex over there off of Spencer Street when Jackie Beard died. So them were the two most heartbreaking times on the fire department for me. I lost my son in 2018, September the 18th, in a car wreck. And that was a gut punch.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
Yeah.
But we're learning to cope with the loss. We're not over it by no stretch of the imagination. information, but we're learning to each and every day to get by. I try to focus on the task at hand. If it's CPR, that's what I try to focus on. If it's a trauma patient, that's what I try to focus on. And I think that's what you got to focus on at the time, in the moment. But it wasn't till after my career that I got to looking at the other side of it. And what I mean by that is, I can remember standing up there at Cone Hospital high-fiving because we've done a good job getting that person to the hospital alive. But the burden that's been put on the families, a successful CPR is a wonderful thing if that person is going to have a pliable life ahead of them. If we just prolong that hope for that family for 3 or 4 days till they had to make the decision to unplug them, I think sometimes we're doing an injustice to the family. And because, it's easier for them to say, well, he died of a heart attack, than I had to unplug him. You know what I mean?
I do.
So, how did I deal with I tried not to focus on it. I just tried to block it out, and I stuck it somewhere deep down inside, and hell no, because I had a good time. I might have pissed everybody off I was around, but I had a good time.
Yeah.
Best time of my life. I think one thing that hurt us along the way was when we started doing all this political correctness and all this sitting around in the groups holding hands singing Kumbaya. I think that took it a little bit to the extreme. I personally, I never witnessed any kind of racial tension or anything like that within the ranks of the firemen. I never saw that. And I wasn't sitting around looking for it either. Was there some disagreements? Yeah, we all had disagreements. I mean, you stick 9 guys or 7 guys and 2 girls into a room, at some point in time you're going to have disagreements. It's just like at home with your family. I mean, you're going to have disagreements, but I just think they was trying to force something on us as an organization, trying to stir up something. I mean, and like I said, I didn't see it. And I'm not a minority either, so maybe I wasn't privy to, well, not privy, but maybe I wasn't treated that way. And maybe some of the rest of the people on the fire felt different than I did, but the biggest change for me, technology-wise, was going to computers. And, if you'd have told me in 1980 when I went to work there, that before I retired, if I stayed 30 years, that we'd have computers in the station and computers on the truck and a computer on our hip, I said, y'all crazy. But that was the biggest challenge toward me as far as learning the computer programs and all that. But I think the fire department done a pretty good job. I mean, if they could train me to operate a computer, they knew what they were doing as far as getting the word out and making it to where people could understand it and utilize it like it needed to be utilized. So to me, I think that and 800 megahertz on the radio, I mean, was the 2 biggest things that really, I think, propelled us as an organization to be able to keep up with data and be able to look at trends and this. The thing that got me is this right here, and it's kind of stuck in my craw for a long time. But when I first came on the fire department in 1980, and I know you know this, everybody in that training class wanted to go to 4, 7, 11, 8. Why is that? Because they had the most fires. Today, who's got the most fires? 4, 7, 11, 8. It ain't changed. But they come out with this graph off the computer about the fire belt in Greensboro. And where's the fire belt at? 4, 7, 11, 8. So, I mean, it's like they had some kind of revelation now that they could put it on paper, you know. But the roles has increased in several areas. And one would be, like I said before, the squads wrote the medical calls in the battalions. We had 3 battalions, we had 3 squads. They wrote all the medical calls. So the guys that were assigned to the engine companies very seldom ever had to go out on a medical call. Well, what was it? Mid to late 90s, they done away with the squads and started letting the engine companies in the territories start responding on the medical calls. So their roles increased as far as having to be proficient in their EMT skills and protocols and all this other stuff. But then the inception of hazardous materials technicians come into the fire service, and then we started getting into the special teams, structure collapse, high angle rescue, confined space. So it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So yeah, I think their roles have significantly gotten more complex. Yeah, it plays a very vital role, and I think it's important. I think it's important that we educate the people on how to prevent fires, what to do in case of a fire, to save as many lives as we can. Now, it's not going to eliminate the job of a firefighter, but through building codes and enforcement and all this other stuff, we've made a significant impact nationwide, I think, with public fire education. But we've always got room for improvement. But yeah, and you know, maybe at some point in time, if the emphasis were put up front on public ed, like it is for extinguishing the fires, responding on the calls, maybe we could even put a more dent into. The first thing I'd advise them is leave their phone in their locker. That's the first thing I'd tell them. The next thing is find somebody on the crew that you're assigned to that is respected and loves the job. And that's the guy you need to migrate to. You need to learn from him, try to emulate him, and show initiative. Number one, if you're walking around the yard and there's a piece of paper laying in the yard, bend over, pick it up, and put it in a trash receptacle of some sort. Don't have the attitude, well, I didn't put it there, so I ain't gonna worry about it. And learn, be a sponge. Learn all you can learn. Go to schools. Go to the National Fire Academy. Do all these things to learn and to network as much as you can, because it will help you as you mature in the fire service and as you move up in the ranks. And that's another thing I want you to really pay close attention to this. Experience every opportunity that you can for specialized teams. Spend some time in fire prevention, investigation, training, whatever, because it's going to make you a more rounded individual for the fire service. Yeah, there's one, and his name's Howard Steed, and he was the youth director at the church I was going to, Hines Chapel, unaffiliated church on Hines Chapel Road, down below where I grew up. And but he was a volunteer fireman with Station 5, or 55 now, Highcombe Road, part of Fire District 13. And he was, I really looked up to him. And matter of fact, I got into the fire service with Fire District 13 in '78, right after I got out of high school. And so he was instrumental in me pursuing my dream. So yeah, he would be one to come to mind. The importance of cooking at the fire station is it builds camaraderie, it builds part of the teamwork that you need, and it also enhances your ability to cook. I mean, and I know there's a lot of guys probably coming on now that's a little bit hesitant because they say, well, I ain't never had to cook. Well, you know what, that's part of the culture. You need to adapt into our culture. And I think eating out versus cooking should be used as like a reward kind of deal. You know, we're going to eat in most of the time, but every once in a while, we'll go out and grab a bite. There's several things that's not happening now in the fire department that was happening when I came on. And I know, like I said, everybody's got their priorities are different and everything, but you know, we used to have softball teams, and we used to, the club, the firefighters club out here was something that everybody belonged to just about, and we'd, the Fun Fourth downtown and all that stuff, we'd always have a booth up there and cook pinto beans and sell cornbread and all that stuff up there, and just had a big time together, you know, doing stuff. And I think we've lost a lot of that. And yeah, get involved in something. I mean, we used to do the March of Dimes Walkathon every year, and I don't think they do that no more. And you know, I guess they still do the United Way stuff, but you know, the United Way is something you give money to. It's not something you're actually involved in doing. But you know, why can't we pick a charity within the organization that we can all work toward doing stuff for and help them out? I mean, even Wounded Warriors or some kind of Habitat for Humanity, the soup kitchen, anything that we could all work together to lift that community up is what we need to be doing. And I think we've lost some of that. And I understand everybody's working at the Greensboro Fire Department now isn't from Greensboro. So maybe they don't have that homegrown kind of, we're transient now. And you know, right after 9/11, well not after 9/11, but after the market crashed, I think there was a lot of guys that were hired at that particular time that was needing a job and not looking for a career. Right. And you know, we've started losing some of them guys now. You know, they got 10 years or so under their belt, and they're walking out the door. And so, I don't know, we got to do something to build that camaraderie back up.
We hope you enjoyed watching these documentaries. It was our goal to share and preserve the memories of our retired Greensboro firefighters. It is our desire that these documentaries will inspire future generations to continue the brotherhood, sisterhood, and camaraderie while always striving for excellence in their careers. While fire apparatus, equipment, and technology have improved, several things will always remain the same. The courage and bravery it takes to mitigate natural and man-made disasters will always be a part of the job. Although our retirees are no longer a physical part of the GFD world, a giant piece of each retiree's memories have been shared with you today. These memories will be in their hearts and minds forever. A special thank you goes out to Captain Harold Haney for his many long hours of recording and editing. Thank you, Harold. A job well done.